Dimensions. Imagine a game, whether football, hockey, or baseball. Every player gets their own position for a game and experiences the whole game in their own way, no matter what, when, or where, even though it's the same game. Dimensions are like these different positions of various players, as incarnated beings, all part of the same team, the Source. The game is to experience all there is in the universe in their own way, each from their own position or dimension. Sometimes these dimensions vary from people to people, being to being, collective to collective, planet to planet, etc. Imagine you are in grade 5 in school where you are learning history, physics, geography, and then you are also learning history, physics, and geography in grade 7. They're the same subjects, but you are learning different things. High chance, without learning the lessons in grade 5, you may not make much sense of those in grade 7 for the same subjects. Same goes for dimensions. As you upgrade, you go past each dimension, higher and higher, either as individual beings or as collective beings. For example, humanity as a collective are mostly in the 3rd or 4th dimensional experience, but a part of it is about to ascend into 5th dimension of experience. In common sense, what we know as dimensions are simply aspects of measuring space. However, as you change your perspective of observation and raise your vibrational frequency, you may realize the existence of dimensions much higher, unlocking a much higher perspective of reality, far broader and diverse in their functions, features, and definitions. Dimensions are states of frequency. Dimensions are not stacked layers of space like floors in a building. They are different vibrational realities, much like radio stations, broadcasting on different frequencies. You tune in to a dimension based on the frequency of your consciousness held within your state of being. The reason for dimensions are simply limitations to have a unique perspective, an experience of all there is through a filter known as the ego that you hold for a certain lifetime. In the spirit or soul level, which is in the 5th dimension or above, all feelings, experiences are there to be explored right away when you need it. There is no sense of working for anything. Everything you can ever imagine is right in front of you when you need it. Hence, souls incarnate to challenge themselves, same way you play a game for challenge. Without challenges, no journey is fun. If you imagine any sports, any life event, challenges are what makes the journey unique and interesting instead of getting what you want right when you want it. Without challenges, towards the end of your life, when you look back at your life and see you have done nothing, achieved nothing, it's a boring picture to watch. You ever watch a movie where there is no deep or complex story, just a person walking around doing normal life stuff? Never is a movie made based on such straight line story. Challenges in the story are what makes them watch-worthy. Same way, if there are no challenges in life, towards the end of life, you will end up with a life story that represents a book with only one chapter and a few pages, which nobody wishes to read since there's nothing to experience, learn, and grow from much. The Source, in order to create an understanding of itself, has diversified the various forms of its expression into different perspectives, which is where dimensions come in. Each dimension gives the Source a unique understanding of itself from a different point of view. In this video, we explore the various realms of perspective, also known as dimensions, to have a better perspective of the overall state of the universe and how things work through the differential aspect of the Source being, exploring itself through everything, all there is. We begin. Dimensions are the framework of infinite possible realities that consciousness navigates through moment to moment. Time, in this sense, is the perception of moving through these parallel realities in a linear way. Dimensions as agreements. Dimensions are agreements of perception. Collective consciousness decides the rules of a dimension. For example, in 3rd dimension, we agree that gravity works a certain way. Time flows forward, and objects are mostly solid, which you can touch. In higher dimensions, different rules apply, because perception shifts, and the need for the type of experience is different. same way an adult may not be excited to have the same experience as a child, or the same thing doesn't excite a child the same way it may excite an adult, due to their difference in frequency of consciousness. In some dimensions, there is no walking, only teleportation or flying by collective agreement on an universal level. In some, there is no talking, only telepathic communication. In some collective, there is no eating, due to their fifth density body compared to humans. In some collective, there is no predation, only symbiosis, etc. Dimensions are infinite. There is no ultimate highest dimension. Creation is infinite. Dimensions unfold endlessly as consciousness explores new frequencies. Each soul, or our soul, chooses which dimensional perspective to project into for the sake of exploration. However, all dimensions in terms of functionality can be categorized into 12 groups. Deep within the rules of division between these categories of dimensions lie the essence of pi. Pi is a mathematical constant that is the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter, resulting in a constant, irrational number whose decimal expansions go on forever without repeating in any predictable pattern, representing the core essence of any dimension in its constant state of expansion. Hence, every dimension shall hold within itself, and through each other, the idea of never exploring anything more than once, and expand forever unpredictably, thereby depicting the infinite nature of the source expression through all there is. There's so much to explore, there's no point in repeating anything. Also, the reason why you and what you are experiencing at this point, here and now, will never happen ever again in the history of the universe. Pi, also known as the transcendental number, reflects the transcendence experienced by any form of consciousness shifting through dimensions at any given point, thereby reflecting the nature of each dimension, unending, ever-expanding. Before we get into the discussion of all dimensions, we wish to give you a brief overview of the three relevant dimensions through which you will experience most of your human life. A gist of the nature of third dimension versus fourth dimension versus fifth dimension. The third dimension. This is the physical space-time reality we commonly experience. It emphasizes separation, linear cause and effect, and physical solidity. The fourth dimension. This is the dimension of time. Our movement through time creates the illusion of continuity. The fourth dimension is within which we experience the space-time matrix that allows the third dimensional experiences to be ordered. The fifth dimension and beyond. These are the higher frequency states where time is less rigid and awareness of interconnectedness and unity increases. In the fifth dimension, synchronicity becomes the dominant organizing principle instead of linear cause and effect. Dimensions are nothing but perspective through which we explore the source, through a certain bandwidth of the source code that flows through us. They are our resonant frequency bandwidth. It's a choice of perspective or a frequency bandwidth that resonates with our own core frequency at any given point, which we create through a factorial source consciousness that's flowing through us at any given point, in order to observe a reality which is nothing but a reflective consciousness frame for nothing but sheer experience. As you shift your perspective, your experience of reality changes, depending on how dense consciousness is, through limitations on that level, meaning the more dense the consciousness is in a certain dimension, the harder it is to shift the perspective and have a rather different experience of reality. Higher the dimension, lower is the density, which means the higher you go from the third dimension to fifth, seventh, eighth, ninth, the density of consciousness becomes lower. The lesser the density, the easier it is to shift perspective in order to have an experience of reality. It's easier to see or manipulate dimensions that are lower than the one where you are being, which means if you're in the seventh dimension, it's easier to see or manipulate dimensions that are lower than seventh, which could be fifth, fourth, or third. But the higher the dimension, lower is the intention don't interfere with lower dimensions due to broader understanding of the cosmic plan, which means higher you go from the third dimension, the lower you feel like interfering with the nature of things in the dimensions that are lower. Because the higher you go, the better is your perspective on the cosmic plan, which is everything is the way it's meant to be, and everything should be allowed to be the way it is. This understanding comes from being able to see way more of the timelines into the past and future all at once. Here you will see on the very right a frame of reality which is composed of nothing but consciousness. You are a multidimensional being, but your ego tells you are nothing but the being in the third dimension, while your soul exists in the fifth dimension, and your oversoul exists in dimensions higher than the fifth. In the middle is the source through which you project the reality within to have an experience of the frames that you see on the very right. The frames are aligned just like the frames in a film. The higher you go in dimension, the perspective becomes wider and broader, and you in one glance, in one projection of the now, at the very middle, get to see or observe a higher number of frames that consists of the consciousness which we experience as reality. Henceforth, higher dimensional beings can predict what humans call future in the 3D timeline. Although, due to the aspect of factor of freedom of choice of every third dimensional being, this projection of the future can change. But the options to which the future can change as per the freedom of choice seems rather limited when you look at it from a higher dimensional perspective, such as 5th, 7th or 9th or any other. The third dimensional experience is like someone walking up the hill. They can only see till the next bend of the road ahead of them. While higher dimensional beings can see all obstacles, possible major events, revelation points, points of interest, checkpoints, etc. Here we give you a tentative aspect of each dimension going from the third all the way to the ninth, past the ninth dimension, which is the 10th, 11th and 12th. The nature of things kinda quantizes into a fixed now, which means consciousness tends to become unnaturally stagnant. In other words, the nature of reality becomes rather unchanging because everything exists all at once when you look at it from any dimensions higher than the ninth dimension. From any dimension higher than the ninth dimension, you tend to see almost everything from a source perspective, and hence, nothing really much changes. However, the moment you enter the ninth dimension, the nature of reality tends to change as the true aspect of creativity comes into play. As you move downward from the ninth dimension towards the third dimension, the nature of perspective becomes smaller and smaller, and the rate at which you move through frames of reality becomes slower and lower. Hence, you might feel like you're creating more, even though from higher dimensions you're creating less. Henceforth, in the third dimension, the scope of creativity becomes the most diverse and vast and impossibly huge, which is engulfed within the higher dimensions from which you can see everything all at once. As you go down each dimension from the 12th dimension, you limit the freedom of movement in terms of experience and what you can experience and how. The 5th dimension is where the boundaries of time and space goes away, and the realm of so-called non-physical or spirit starts. Everything is free here to explore and to move through change. This is where you can experience creativity at its best. If your presence shifts to the 5th dimension, your so-called body or physical body will cease to exist. This is somewhat similar to what happens when you die. You go back to 5th dimension as a soul. You can process 5th dimensional frequencies or energies through your 3rd dimensional body. Though your soul is a 5th dimensional presence, your body is a 3rd dimensional presence within it in terms of consciousness crystallization, through which your presence is quantized in any dimension. As and if you process fifth dimensional frequencies more and more through your third dimensional physicality or body aspects, it is bound to change. Very similar to the idea of what you eat influences you. What you eat becomes you. Absence of disease and slow aging are only some of the side effects of processing fifth dimensional frequencies through your third dimensional body, which means the more and more you process or channel fifth dimensional frequencies through your third dimensional body, which are mostly positive, such as unconditional love, compassion, understanding, joy, your body naturally tends to heal itself, and it ages less due to absence of negative frequencies and shrinkage of time. You can access fifth dimensional frequencies while holding a third dimensional body when you dream or use intuition or express passion, or if your third dimensional body is in a similar state of being, such as samadhi or deep meditation. A fifth dimensional entity is in a complete state of fifth dimension, which is both density of quantization of consciousness and energy processing. And it is in a fifth dimension of exploring reality, while you as a human being are in the third dimension and channeling mostly third dimensional energies, which are human thoughts, beliefs, emotions, etc. And sometimes you also process or channel fifth dimensional energies such as your intuition or passion. Simply put, dimensions are realms of spiritual growth. As you grow spiritually, your existence moves higher from the third dimension towards the fifth. In the fifth dimension, the aspect of good or bad ceases to exist. As you move from third dimension higher towards the fifth dimension, the nature of all positive and negative frequencies tends to merge into either love or fear. Finally, when you enter the fifth dimension, the aspect of good or bad ceases to exist, seeking balance through an intention to seek oneness and to better understand the separation tends to start here. From this dimension onwards, we only understand everything in terms of positive and negative frequencies only. The fourth dimension, time as you know of, cannot exist in your perspective once you ascend higher up from the fourth dimension. Fourth dimension is where time mostly exists. Time is created through the fourth dimension perspective and projected into the third dimension of reality. The fourth dimension is the most vast dimension in terms of frequency bandwidth, in order to keep the third dimension where and how it is. The fourth dimension hooks the third dimensional timelines within itself through the space parameter of quantum crystallization of consciousness. The fifth dimension encloses the fourth dimension with the time parameter within itself. The fourth dimension is in a constant state of complete unrest and expansion through breakdown and integration via transition or translation of energy. Everything in fourth dimension is either shifting to third dimension or the fifth dimension and back. Most spirits and guides can be found here accessing the third dimensional connections. The third dimension is the densest and lowest of all dimensions as we know of. 3 equals 1 plus 2 equals 12. Which is a full circle going down all the way from the 12th dimension into the third. The freedom of movement of all consciousness is restricted here via the parameters of space and time for a very unique experience of reality, which is otherwise unavailable in higher dimensions, thereby creating the highest scope of movement or work that can be achieved by any light being, which is your soul. Due to the restrictions that are available in the third dimension, there's a lot of work that can be achieved by shifting perspective which otherwise cannot be achieved in other dimensions higher than the third. In other words, this is where we realize the boundaries of space, therefore find the highest scope of exploration of physical reality. This is where time is required to quantize the exploration for assessment. In other words, we create time to quantize the exploration or experience of the third dimensional space that we are having at any given point. The reason for such dimensional variations are simply limitations to have a unique perspective and experience of all there is, through a filter known as the ego that you hold for a certain lifetime. These are dimensions of experience where the higher you go, you gain more visibility of all lower dimensions. If you consider the fifth dimensional experience to be looking at a TV screen which consists all your lifetimes here on Earth, a sixth or seventh dimensional experience is looking at a screen that contains all fifth dimensional TV screens all at once. In eighth dimension it becomes a multitude of screens, each containing everything that's happening or will happen or has happened in every galaxy, and this process repeats as you go towards higher dimensions. And that concludes our today's exploration. Our gratitude for your participation in the ascension journey of humanity. Feel free to like and subscribe to find similar videos in the future. Check out our videos from the Universe Unlocked series in the description. Comment here if you need more clarity on anything. Search for any specific topic that might interest or concern you. And remember to keep exploring. Until next time, 47, logging out.